Something about the heat shield tile is getting SpaceX mad. Like, as soon as the hexagonal tiles are fixed, when the Starship fires up, the heavy vibration of the 33 Raptor engines beneath the super heavy booster shakes the ship on the booster, and the tiles will start falling off one after another. This is a challenge that SpaceX is looking for viable solutions to fix. The purpose of the tiles was to protect the ship from high heat, which will be experienced by the ship as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere from space. The type of heat that we're talking about there is more than 800 degrees Celsius. And the most dangerous move is that if any tiles are pulled off during re-entry, the portion that is pulled off during re-entry, that particular part will still melt, which of course will linger to other parts of the stainless steel body. However, the aim of protecting the Starship surface from high heat during re-entry will not be achieved. So how can SpaceX go about this to make sure that none of the tiles pull off during re-entry and the Starship body is not melted by the high heat? Let's discuss more about it in this video. On a ground test stand, SpaceX performs static firings of the Starship. That's a far worse condition for those tiles than a genuine Starship launch in which the ship sits on top of the 220-foot tall booster, the first stage of the Starship. Elon believes that placing that white, flexible ceramic fiber mat between the backside of the tile and the Starship's stainless steel tile would prevent the tile from falling off, but that was just a misconception. So the chemical that might be used to seal the heat shield with the Starship might be cow wool 3000, which has a continuous use temperature of up to 1528 degrees Celsius. Even if one or more tiles become dislodged, that mat will remain linked to the ship. Thermal protection tiles are critical for the spacecraft to survive re-entry. A spacecraft will gain a large amount of heat during re-entry, converting the vehicle's velocity to heat through friction with the air. There are a few ways to deal with the heat. An ablative heat barrier will heat up and burn away, leaving the energy with it. The issue with ablative heat shields is that they burn up and must be replaced, which is inconvenient if you want to relaunch a Starship within an hour of landing, as SpaceX intends to do with the Starship. Starship instead employs ceramic thermal protection panels to insulate the Starship from the heat of re-entry in order to eventually allow for a faster reusability. The tiles, like the space shuttles, are exceedingly light and brittle, so this is why they eventually fall off and even break. The manufacture of these thermal protection tiles takes a significant amount of time, as there are approximately 25,000 of them on each Starship. The bakery that SpaceX uses to produce heat shield tiles is located in Cocoa Beach, Florida, but SpaceX intends to soon commence the production at Starbase Boca Chica. If Starship 24 and other future Starships are going to survive re-entry, the current attachment method and tiles appear to have a high risk of breaking and falling off. This cannot be allowed to happen. Elon Musk has just responded to Starship 6's engines firing, the TPS being destroyed, and the grass at Starbase being set on fire. These heat tiles were developed specifically to shield the rocket from the effects of atmospheric re-entry. At speeds of around 16,777 miles per hour, the spacecraft will plunge into the atmosphere of Mars. It will slow itself down by doing a move called a belly flop, which is similar to what a skydiver would do. In a conversation with Popular Mechanics, Elon Musk explained that aluminium and carbon fiber can maintain a steady state operation up to temperatures of approximately 500 degrees Fahrenheit. On the other hand, stainless steel can withstand temperatures of up to 1600 degrees. This is a step in the right direction, but it does indicate that the steel will require additional support in order to survive the re-entry in the Earth's atmosphere as it comes back from space. Additionally, many heat tiles on the ship have been falling down due to the immense vibration produced during the static fire. Zach Golden on Twitter said almost 30 damaged or missing tiles on Starship 24 after a 6-engine static fire test that lasted for 8 seconds. In reply to his tweet, Elon Musk said, "Yep, there is a reason why we do static fires much better to break things on the ground than en route to orbit. Thermal protection tiles are key to a spacecraft surviving re-entry." Given that each of the tiles is roughly the size of a dinner plate, the upper stage prototype threw off a good dozen tiles before the last remaining workers had cleared the area. This presents a potentially serious work hazard because the area had not been completely cleared. Since the Starship is intended to slow its descent by performing a movement known as a belly flop, a significant portion of its side will need to be covered in the black tiles. During re-entry, the temperatures at the surface can reach terrible levels. For instance, the air that impacted NASA's space shuttle reached temperatures well beyond 3000 degrees Fahrenheit. forcing the use of tiles with a comparable design. Ceramics were not used in the production of the tiles used on the space shuttle. Rather, silica fibers, which are an excellent insulator, were used. White hot parts reached orbital entry temp of around 1650 Kelvin, Musk commented in a follow-up tweet at the time. The tiles are designed to cover the side facing the Earth as the massive vehicle makes its descent belly first. No shield needed on leeward or backside, Musk clarified back in 2019. A transpiration cooling system, meanwhile, will make sure that Starship will be ready to fly again immediately after landing, according to the CEO. Since at least the early scaled-down Starhopper prototypes in 2019, SpaceX has been testing the tiles, but it does not seem to work. However, the tiles themselves have undoubtedly undergone numerous changes and modifications since then. Last year, SpaceX figured out how to deploy the various tiles using gigantic robotic arms, but merely installing it without making it function as planned is not enough. Current tiles and attachment techniques appear susceptible to cracking and detachment, which is adequate for Starship 24 and future Starships. The majority of SpaceX supporters have advised Elon Musk on how to integrate a functional strategy that will make the heat shield adhere to the stainless steel body of the Starship. In order for several Starships to survive re-entry, SpaceX must figure out how to reliably make and install more durable thermal tiles. A slight color variation in the tiles is a result of SpaceX experimenting with production, but aside from Ship 24, Booster 7 successfully completed a spin prime test with multiple Raptor engines at Central Daylight Savings Time. This was the largest spin prime test a Super Heavy booster has ever performed. The last remaining uncertainty is whether or not Ship 24 is prepared for its initial static fire test. Here is another suggestion for the heat shield tiles to stick to the stainless steel body. Each tile must be sewed or wired to the skin and to the tiles adjacent to it. Mats of tiles might be pre-sewn together and then mounted to the Starship's body to improve tile laying. There would be two varieties of tiling, one that overlaps its adjacent tiles and the other that underlaps its nearby tiles. The degree of overlap and underlap would permit a less stiff connection. As the skin of the Starship flexes and shakes, the tiles would float to some degree. The wiring connecting the tiles would have elastic qualities that reduce vibration and restore the tiles to their original position. Again, it was suggested that the tile needs to be held on with a fastener so that it doesn't fall off when the different materials expand and reduce. How about some kind of ball and socket fastener, where the socket is a little bigger than the ball and lets it expand, but isn't big enough to let the ball come out? At this point, it looks like Starship and Super Heavy can't be used again because of the thermal production system problem. Still, none of the missing tiles seem likely to lead to a loss of vehicle. Even though SpaceX's Starship isn't reusable, it is still the best and cheapest major assembly in the world if you look at how much the equipment costs right now. It will be a good idea for SpaceX to send this vehicle into space to find out if there are any problems. Conditions on the launch pad are very different from those during a real launch, and the real problem could be much worse or much less important. There are no plans to reuse either the primary components, so that won't cost anything. The trip is worth it as long as they can find or recover enough of the material to learn something about the tiles. In your own suggestion, how can the heat shield be properly attached to the Starship? Ready or not, Elon Musk officially has announced the SpaceX first orbital Starship launch, and it could be sooner than you think. Click on the video to learn more about that.